More now on our breaking news from earlier this hour. The New York Times reporting a second controversial flag was flown at the home owned by a family of Justice Samuel Alito. As we mentioned, the Appeal to Heaven flag was seen at the Alito's New Jersey beach home last summer. According to the Times, the flag dates back to the Revolutionary War and has become a symbol of the Stop the Steal movement that falsely claims Biden lost the 2020 election. This follows a separate New York Times report last week about an upside-down American flag at the Alito home in Virginia 2 years ago. Joining me is former FBI Director James Comey, who's the author of a new fictional crime novel called Westport. I want to start with Justice Alito. There's reporting now that he flew, or his family flew, 2 different flags that are associated with January 6 over his homes at different times. Is that at all acceptable?
Well, no, it's deeply concerning. I don't understand enough about this second flag. I'm no expert in extremist flag waving, but they're both very concerning for someone in his position, because public trust and confidence is everything in the institutions of justice.
As you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene and others are now accusing federal agents of seeking to assassinate former President Trump during a search at Mar-a-Lago. They cite this document that was unsealed by Judge Cannon in the classified documents case. It's entitled Policy Statement, Use of Deadly Force. We're putting it up there. Do you know what can you talk about what this document is?
I'm smiling because it's so crazy. If you put this in a novel, it would get rejected by your editor.
You would not write this in one of your novels?
I would not. This is the standard FBI protocol that applies to every search, and it simply reminds the participants in the search of what the rules are around the use of deadly force. It's not specific to Mar-a-Lago. It's not specific to any...
This would be in any search?
Any search and every search.
With the criminal trial in New York, where do you think this is headed?
I think it's highly likely to result in a conviction.
You do?
Oh, yeah. A small possibility, I think, of a hung jury. I think there's almost no possibility of acquittal. Again, you can't know. I've tried a lot of cases. You can't know a case fully unless you've tried it or been in the courtroom for every second.
Hung juries are rare.
They're rare, but it only requires one juror to say, I'm not quite there, and to hold out. So that's why I say a small possibility, but not a real possibility, given my experience. I would say 80% chance of conviction, given the case they put together.
You think they did their job, even with all the weaknesses in some of their witnesses?
Yeah, I think they built a case that was not subject to cross-examination, really. It's based on documents and texts and emails and the words of the defendant. And then they presented their most controversial witness, the cooperating bagman. But the case, I bet they even talked about whether to call him, given the strength of their case, before they put him on. I could see why they decided they had to put him on, and looked to me like the evidence crossed over, which is a term used by one of my...
You think they might not have even needed to call Michael Cohen?
I think they probably discussed it, whether they'd gotten the case in so smoothly and so many bricks to build a conviction building that they might have hesitated to call him.
Do you think if the former president is found guilty, do you worry about what the response to that might be?
No. I think I continue to worry about threats against individual poll workers and council people and that sort of thing. I'm not worried about an uprising of violence on Donald Trump's behalf. I don't think you've seen the crowds anywhere he's gone. I think a message was sent after January 6th that your life will be ruined if you engage in that kind of behavior. And his crowd are not jihadis looking to die for the orange god. They are people who are attached to him as a cult leader in a way, an entertainment figure, but they're not going to lay themselves down for him.
Nikki Haley now says she will vote for Donald Trump. What do you think if there is another Trump term, what does that mean for the Department of Justice, for the rule of law in this country?
Dire threat to the Department of Justice's autonomy and independence, and to the rule of law generally. And that's why I keep saying to people, I don't know what your concerns are from left or right about Joe Biden, but a vote for anybody but him is a vote for a threat to the rule of law. That's how serious it is.
Is the institution not strong enough, or the pillars of the foundation of justice in this country, are they strong enough to withstand a Trump term?
I guess it depends on what you mean by withstand. Yeah, the institution would exist 4 years. If he left after 4 years, would still be there, but it would be severely damaged, and maybe a cultural change will have been worked that would be very difficult to undo.
And that would be by what? By filling it with people who are doing his bidding, who are not, following the rule of law above loyalty to a president?
Yeah, people He'll have to scrape the bottom of the barrel to staff the political positions, but there's plenty of scrapees at the bottom of our national barrel. And so he'll put people in position who are willing to use the power, the investigative and prosecutive power, to go after the president's enemies, to go after people they don't like. And that's a very dangerous place to be.
I want to talk about your new novel. You and I spoke, I think it was about a year ago. You were already writing or had written this book. It's called Westport. What I liked about it is that it's a blend of both financial crimes, but also a murder mystery.
Yeah, and you're right. I had written it. The way fiction works, I didn't know this before I started doing this, is you write well ahead. I'm writing the third book.
It's the same protagonist.
Yes.
In the book. You don't need to have read the first book in order to enjoy this one.
That's right. Nora Carlton was a federal prosecutor in the first book, and now she's working in the financial industry. And it's a murder whodunit that puts Nora at the center in the crosshairs, that I think will be a pretty good summer read for people.
And you're the protagonist, the main character, Nora Carlton. How did you create her? I mean, what was the inspiration?
The inspiration is my oldest daughter, who's a tall federal prosecutor, currently a federal prosecutor in Manhattan. And I put in other elements of my 4 daughters so that I can, if they don't like it, I can say, that's your sister. But I can close my eyes and picture my oldest girl when I write Nora, and that makes it easy and a labor of love.
And is there already a third in the works?
Yeah, the third is out for loving but brutal feedback from my family right now. So it'll be out this time next year.
James Comey, thank you so much.
Great to be with you as always.